All right, thanks everyone for having us, LSI for organizing that, Scott and Henry. We have an exciting panel here sharing about Israel innovation and how it drives the future of cardiac care. We'll start with a quick introduction, then Professor Lotan will give a short overview to kind of share our experience and knowledge, and then we'll open up for some panel discussion. So I'm Tal Wenderow, I'm Managing Partner at Star 51 Capital. Professor Lotan, you want to introduce yourself?
Well, Chaim Lotan, interventional cardiologist, the head of the heart center at Hadassah, and currently I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at the hospital with a background in several startups. And together with Professor Bayar, we're running a very big meeting which is called ICI, namely for innovation in cardiovascular interventions, and we'll show you some of it.
Hi, Amos Ziv. I'm the founder and chief scientific officer of CardiaCare, a non-invasive neuromodulation wearable device for the treatment of atrial fibrillation at-home settings. I was privileged to participate in many of the ICI meetings, which are I consider them one of the best in the world in cardiology.
My name is Rann Marom. I'm the CEO of Paragate Medical. We are developing an implantable device to decongest chronic heart failure patients and basically eliminate a vast amount of readmissions and take a very painful inpatient problem and move the treatment of it to an outpatient setting. We're in clinical trials at the moment.
Hi, I'm Greenburg, co-founder and CEO of Magnisity. Magnisity developed a novel 3D tracking technology that enables us tracking the deformation of anatomy. Our initial indication is for the lung, but we're looking for other indication like structural heart and neuro.
Great, thanks everyone. Chaim, do you want to start?
Well, just for starting the presentation, I'd like to talk a little bit about Israeli innovation driving the future of cardiac care. Why Israel? Because Israel is really considered a startup nation, as we all know. And despite the fact that Israel is a really very small country, you can see that with one gas station you can cover the entire country. Still, it's a hub for many, many companies in Israel, international hub for the rest of the world. Some of the interesting things about it is that the time and the price to get from an idea to an exit in Israel is very short. First prototype, advanced prototypes, and animal studies, clinical trials. The time is relatively half the time that it takes in, for example, the US, and the total investment to positive cash flow in US might be between 23 and 70 million compared to Israel, which is much, much lower. Life science in Israel is growing very much. We have close to 1,800 companies with life science, where cardiovascular is really one of the leading ones. And the idea is that there is a lot of companies with out-of-the-box thinking, a strong ecosystem and integration, organized medical database. We have a very good database for more than 20 years, government support, and definitely cutting-edge technologies. And for those of you who are in the field, you know that many of innovation and intervention in cardiology really started in Israel. There are some new areas of cardiac innovation with the advanced platform for valves and stents. AI is taking a very big step, and also all the implantable sensors that are there. There is a huge trend to device miniaturization, genomic medicine, wearable, and we'll see some of them, and surgical interventional thing. AI is taking a very big role, like we heard in the previous session, with predictive analytics, automated interpretation, and personalized treatment. All of them are in those companies. And this has been translated to quite significant success stories in the past. We had Medinol that had the first stents, Valtech Cardio with valve treatment, DIA Imaging, CathWorks recently with analysis of FFR, Corindus, which was by our friend here with a robotic catheterization, Professor BR, and PVT started. But even in the last 2 years, which are quite difficult to use in Israel, we had the exit of V-Wave for 1.7 billion, Shunt, InnoValve for treating valves, and Boston Scientific acquired Sonovi for renal denervation. And even just last week, we had Edwards, which acquired Vectorious. So despite everything, there are a lot of activities. As you can see, innovation is our DNA and our heartbeat. And Shimon Peres, who was the late president, and in one of our meeting, ICI meeting, said our legacy is mortality, knowledge, and peace. This satisfaction has led us so far, and I'm fully confident that it'll carry us to new heights in the never-ending quest for Tikkun Olam. So with this, I'll invite all of you to come to our next ICI meeting in December, where we celebrate 30-year anniversary for the meeting with a lot of new things and innovation. The theme of the meeting is, what is the unmet need? Unlike other meetings where you see the past, the trial, we are discussing what is still missing, what are the problems, and where are we going. So thank you very much for coming to this session, and Tal, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chaim. Hear me right now? Here we go. Thanks, Chaim. This is fascinating. So I forgot about the gas tank. I wonder what happened with electric car, if you can do the same now. But just starting from the top, right? So much innovation, so many companies, so much exit. And people ask me, I live in Boston, why Israel, right? So kind of go across to our panelists here, meaning when you get the same question, right, from investors, from friends, colleagues, how do you answer that? Why there's such a cluster of innovation in Israel?
Should I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. You know, they say in Israel that too many people meet, it takes about 10 minutes before they realize that they have a mutual acquaintance. So it's very tight and very communicative community. People know people, and things spread very fast on a very personal level initially. I think that's one reason. I think a very important reason is, and Chaim mentioned that in his presentation, is the Israeli healthcare system, which is based on or has basically databases that actually have been following patients and outcomes for decades now, which are very accessible to startups and VCs, and a lot of, especially now in the age of AI, this is making a huge advantage also in Israel. Specifically about cardiology, I think cardiology is in general one of the most open to innovation paradigms out there. I mean, compared to other fields, I feel that as a cardiovascular startup, you approach the KOLs and you talk to the cardiologists with new innovation, and the reception is always enormous. It's like, I think cardiology is the most open-minded and open to innovation field in Israel. So when you combine that with something like ICI, you get a very, very proliferal ecosystem. Yeah.
Rann, Benny?
I think one other element is Israel is a country of immigrants, which the result of that is there's a lot of ties between the population in Israel and the countries where these people came from. Specifically for our context, it's Western Europe and the United States, and that in turn drove people in Israel to go and work for American companies in the U.S. and then bring them back to Israel, and then they started R&D operations, and that just seeded, and then acquisitions, and we've seen that in high tech and then in medical devices as well. So that element of having strong ties between what is a small and isolated and innovative country and the target markets, on the other hand, has been a huge force multiplier for us, and it's a self perpetuating cycle. It just continues to grow. Foreign companies continue to grow their operations and grow acquisitions, and that just drives yet additional talent exchange, etc. So that's been, I think, a key element.
You know, Rann, I'd like to ask you one question. You know, part of the thing is really thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
And I want to understand, why do Israelis think out of the box? And I'll take an example, your company, Paragate, which initially when I heard about it, I think it's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's still working. So can you explain, how did you arrive to this idea, your team, and how do teams arrive to
I think
what seems to be crazy ideas?
Well, first of all, if you look at the country, what it looked like 100 years ago, going and establishing a state there was thinking out of the box and slightly crazy. So it's in the DNA, and the circumstances have forced a lot of creativity and finding solutions without a lot of resources, as you pointed out. It's just become part of the culture, and then that has been able to tap into some of the other strengths that we've been discussing, and we see that hotbed of activity there. Specifically for us, our founder Yair Feld. He's a interventional cardiologist.
Explain to us a little bit about the technology.
Yeah. So, and he's a physicist, and he came up with this idea of basically he saw a patient that was suffering from too much congestion, and they predicted they have a life expectancy of 2 weeks. And she continued to survive because her body was just finding other ways to get rid of the excess fluid that was impeding her breathing. And then he came up with this idea, again, being an engineer and a physicist, to find a parallel gateway, Paragate, into the system and remove the congestion. And yes, being a creative person, he thought about it very, very differently. Actually, it's pretty straightforward. Go to where the fluid is in the tissue and take it out. Don't try and strengthen other mechanisms of the body that are already way too weak. Just take the fluid out and help the body with a parallel system. And yes, so far in clinical trials, it's showing very promising results.
And I think part of that is what drive innovation in Israel and more in cardiac is the early successes, right? And those early success drive more and more people into that. Then you were involved, like, not necessarily in cardiac, but early success, and then you took that to the next step.
So first of all, I want to say that the healthcare in Israel is fairly developed, and also a lot of physicians go to do fellowship and subspecialties, mainly in the States. So they bring the drive for those new technologies back to Israel. Collaborating with engineering brings that closing the loop very fast. Also on the side of the engineers or the innovators, if you look at the last 30 years, the industry has been developed very much. I mean, 30 years ago, there were no catheter manufacturing capability in Israel. So everybody had to go and do, and now there are a lot of engineers that do that, understand that, develop a system, and the industry is very much developed. People move from one company to another, bring that out of the box thinking from one specialty to a different specialty. So I think that's something that drives a lot of innovation, and we strive wherever somebody tells us it doesn't work. That's when we start thinking and finding different ways. For instance, in my experience, I've been working with electromagnetic tracking for 30 years, and it has limitations. So me and my partner thought how we overcome those limitations, the cost and the metal interference, and we came up with completely different EM tracking that is good for any area in the body. It's low cost, enable us to track not just a single point, but a full curve, and enable 3D navigation, which is important in any interventional procedure.
Thanks. So we're all drinking for the Kool-Aid, right? We're a little bit biased, right? But if people from the outside look at Israel, right, and say there's some challenges, and let's ignore the geopolitical situation for a second. What are challenges that you're facing when you're building a company in Israel? And Venny, to your point, there are physicians that are trained in the US, but practicing something differently in Israel, or manufacturing, or customer. What kind of the challenges you guys are facing?
Yeah, I think Well, for startups, the financing landscape in the past few years has been difficult anyway, especially more so for Israeli companies trying to fundraise from, US-based companies or European VCs. I think the role of an innovator is to keep on innovating and thinking out of the box. It's not just the technology. We see that every day. I mean, thinking creatively, even in deal making. So, example for us, it was two things that kind of led to two kind of out of the box. I was just happened to be here in LSI last year. I was in Portugal, near Lisbon, and I entered a panel which was called Alternative Fundraising Opportunities. That talked about family offices and talked about high network individuals and syndicates. And I approached one of the panelists over there, and I think that he was really appreciative of our technology and our data, and basically we started diligence, and in that process of diligence, they were saying, many of our investors are US-based investors, and they qualify for some certain tax benefits only for US companies. So we have a US subsidiary company now that so there's the bottom line is, as this is going very well, and we're closing 10 million around it. It's a very, very difficult time, but it all started was like looking at these alternatives, and sometimes you have to make these adjustments. Like a U.S. subsidiary, for example, to have U.S. investors come in as well. So.
And Chaim, from your perspective, innovation is the same, meaning patient obviously is patient, but you practice even PCI or structural heart, sometimes different people, different helpers, US versus Israel. How do you see that?
No, I think the problems in Israel in the entire West world are the same. It's different when you approach the eastern part of the globe, and I have a lot of experience in China, and there are a lot of differences. But on a whole, the same problems that we see here, we see in Europe and the United States. But I want to continue the same question that you asked and actually come to you as one of the pioneers that started robotic intervention together with Professor Bayar. It's an out-of-the-box idea to have a robot that will do all the work you start to do, and then there is a problem to continue big scaling in Israel, and at some time you have to move. What are the problems? When are the problems approaching? What is the time to move? How do you find your way in this big world?
I don't think there's a one single solution or answer for that. I mean, I can tell you, we moved, my family and I, my child was 3 back then, to the Boston area, and they all made sacrifice, right, to move in. There's several options. I do think there's a point, depends on the company's phase, that you have to be where the market is. I'll, Rafi will love to hear your thoughts later on, but I believe if we stayed in Israel, the company will go under, because you don't have the late scales of investors and ability of physician and be part of that ecosystem on a daily basis. But, even on this panel, you have 3 categories, I'll say, right? The founder CEO that actually just brought a US CEO. Rann will love your take of a VC guy that actually moved to be a CEO, and Benny is running it from scratch as a founder, so it's different perspective, and that's, I think, part of the unique. But, as founders, we all founders are, it's a grind. We all know that. And you have to believe, and you have to be persistent, and just keep, whether there is a box or not, you can have those chicken and the egg discussion if there is even a box. But Rann, going back to you, meaning we met the first time a couple of months ago in Boston when you came to a conference, and you said, I was a VC and then moved to be a CEO of a company, which is really, and not in medtech VC, right?
A little bit of medtech.
A little bit.
Yeah, right now. Yeah. Why? That was a good question. There's why, and there's some of the challenges and some of the things that have helped me. The why is basically, and this is not my first operating position after I was a VC. But in all of them, there was an element of falling in love. I think you need that because it's an early stage company, and it takes it takes a lot of passion. And I read what you were saying in the Lens interview that I need to do what it takes. I clean the coffee machine or whatever, and you cannot do this if you don't have some kind of emotional connection to the need that you're addressing and to the people that you're working with. And on that point, you ask what helps Israel innovate and succeed, and part of it is the talent pool. And I was very lucky in my group to really inherit a very, very strong core team of VPs that have great experience both in entrepreneurial situations and also in large corporates such as Medtronic. And I'm just able to rely on them for that, and that helps me a lot with learning curve, and just with having base to consult with. So I'm really lucky to have an example of the strength of the talent pool in Israel around my company. So it's not the only answer, but it's not the whole answer, but it's a big part of it. Is just having those people with me, both to motivate me to join and then to enable success.
Oh,
of course, we haven't succeeded yet, but I think we will. So
there's no other option, right?
It's not an option, right?
That's what you promised your wife. That
yeah. Wife, investors, colleagues. Yeah.
Meaning the other thing, for the honest, I'm not sure how many people know. There's a lot of medical device strategic companies have actually an office in Israel, right? They've developed an office and all that. Meaning, when you in the ecosystem, do you hire from those strategic development house, or they already changed the mindset to be corporate like in the US? Because they usually hire, bot company like many old companies super big for that, and then they try to grow the internal scale and internal R&D. Do you see the same culture stay on the R&D in Israel from the strategic point?
I think it's a company specific answer, I guess. It changes. My co-founder CTO just moved to Austin because our production facility is in Richmond, Texas, which is an hour away. So talent that he's now recruiting has to do with the local area and in that phase. I can see it go both ways. On the other hand, we have discussions with the strategics we've always had. They're interested in what we're doing, especially in the post-ablation field. And so I don't know. So for us, it's transition phase. So far, all the talent was from Israel, but for now, we're going to be starting recruiting some in the US. So I still don't have an answer.
Part of the main problem of a startup company is getting the first money to move on. And as everyone knows, it's getting more and more complex. Now you are on the other side. What would your advice be, or how would you suggest for young companies to bring in money, especially when they want to approach American companies and distance and everything?
I think the most unique thing I've found, and I was in a venture partner and strategic for a couple of years, is in the end of the day, you're not doing a lot of investment, and Rann knows that. SFVC or people think you're doing a lot. Each partner do 2, 3, 4, potentially 5 a year, and you see 1,000. So what it means is that you have to develop those personal relations with people, because people want to work with people. They want to trust you. They want to trust that if there's an obstacle, you will share that and they will be with you. So I think that personal relation is almost as important than the product oftentimes. Because you don't want to invest in people that are not fit to your ecosystem, and just keep talking. Meaning, in the end, one will be there. So you have to. It's not the same pitch to all investors. Each one has a different swim lane. Each have a different things that they invest, or different angle point that they like from that regards. I wish again there was a magic solution, because then everyone will stand in line to get that. switching a little bit to the future, right? The title is Future of Cardiac Care. Meaning we have three kind of out of the box, disruptive, whatever you want to call it, from, new pulse watch to change AFib to heart failure to magnetic navigation. What do you see next, right? Imagine your product is out there. What do you see next? What do you see else is coming from your perspective?
Robotics, for sure.
That's history.
Right? It's not history.
Robotics
and the term robotics is not correct because it's manipulator.
Right.
Autonomous in medical device would take some time, like it takes in cars. But first of all, the ability to do things slowly and leave your hands for a second and not need to hold the patient. I think that's clear. That is much better, much accurate in any procedure. And it's being developed. I mean, Intuitive brought Da Vinci 25, 30 years ago, and now I wouldn't consider doing an open surgery. I would go and do a robotic surgery because the outcomes the patient outcomes are much better, and the healing process. I think it would imply to all other indications and all other interventional procedure that would be minimal invasive and robotics, and autonomous would follow because AI would support it.
Chaim?
My view is a little bit different, I must say. I was in a visit in Finland a while ago, and we went to visit some new hospital. And it was amazing that the size of the hospital today is half of the size that the old hospitals. And I said, why is that? And they said, in the future, people will not be in the hospital. They'll be at home. Hospital will be only intensive care units and surgery units. The patient will be hospitalized at home. So I see the future of care and cardiac care as how to deliver the best care at home. In cardiology, in monitoring, in telemedicine, in cardiac, all the cardiac care. And I think that now more and more I'm trying to think, we used to talk about telemedicine or whatever, but the question is, how do we sit here and monitor our patients, provide them the care, provide them everything at home? The population is aging, and we see it very quickly. We need other things for the aging population, other needs and everything. So I believe that robotics is important, but we'll need the robot at home, and we'll need everything at home, and we'll need to control it. And I think those are going to be the challenging. Dealing with aging population at home.
You want to echo on what Chaim is saying. That it's a great example. I think that point of care is one of the major shifts that we're going to be seeing in the next decade, and it has to do with home care monitoring and, in our example, therapy. So we always said our startup initially had two paths to choose from. We had a big device, which was supposed to be a clinic point of care, which was supposed to do neuromodulation patients for a period of several weeks to prevent AF. And then we also had some IP that we wrote on a wearable, this wearable. Right? So, and we decided to make the gamble on saying the future is going to be home care. The future is going to be both monitoring and therapy at home. So, I totally agree. I think that there's no contradiction, by the way. Of course, acute cardiac care and surgeries will be in the hospitals and robotics. But in terms of like the shift in point of care, and I didn't know that about hospitals is it Norway? Yeah. And it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. So the aging population and the ability to monitor patients, not alone. For us, we always said that the evolution of wearables is going to be wearable home care monitoring and therapy, and this is what we've done. So, yeah, I see that happening. By the way, we see that also in terms of regulation. FDA's got a lot more guidelines about remote monitoring. Reimbursement is becoming also a big. We have remote monitoring codes. CPT codes already existing for patient monitoring at home. So yeah.
So almost you're holding the watch. So when you design now, we all used to design for the OR, the IC, right? For the customers, the physician, the nurse, the tech, and all that. How does it change your mindset that in the end of the day, you designed for a consumer to wear it at home?
Since I haven't done a non-consumer before, so I can't say, but I can say that there's a lot of work and there are actually a lot of challenges also in the clinical studies to do home care. So there's a lot of work that goes into the design, a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of bioengineering the device so it's comfortable, usable. The aging population is a challenge. Our first two studies, we wanted to make sure that we're getting the right population. So average age was 65. So you have to make the app very approachable, very simple for us. It's just measure, one button, treat, next second button, and there's also a challenge of the studies. Most of the centers that run, the hospitals that run clinical studies are not accustomed to home care studies. And that was a huge challenge for us, both in Sinai and in Tel Aviv. So, yeah.
Rann, your thoughts?
I think most has been said. I mean, we're in the same area of moving care for a very inpatient problem out to the home. I think the economic pressures are going to make it inevitable. It's just the current model is unsustainable. And I think what else is happening, and I think we're both an example of that, is the convergence between digital and device. At the end of the day, there's a lot of opportunity to use data in order to personalize treatment. And especially when you're talking about aging populations and chronic disease, the variability between patients just becomes huge. So that becomes an imperative. So this dichotomy in certain feces between digital and device there's a huge interface between those. They're going to converge. But yeah, the trend is where you're saying it is, I think.
So switching gears, Chaim, you started with Professor BR, the ICI, right? Today everyone is speaking about innovation, but 30 years ago, no one did that. What drove you to even...
Well, my failures, I was in charge of the cath lab, and I had some ideas. One of the ideas, for example, was in patient with bad kidneys, and you cannot give dye. And we had a crazy idea trying to take the dye out of the coronary sinus. And that was 30 years ago. We tried. We did. I did it on patient at that time. He didn't need an IRB or whatever. It was very, very successful. And, I wrote a paper. And then someone came to me and he said, "You're stupid. If you write a paper, you don't have an IP." I said, "What is an IP?" Realizing that in medical school, they don't teach us anything about innovation, about startup, about anything. And I was lucky to be in Stanford and meet my friend there, Hanson, and the foundry and a lot of other people. And I realized that if you really want to understand what innovation is you have to teach physicians also innovation. Professor BR was on the same side with his ideas. And when we came back, I said, we had a small meeting in Israel, which was teaching people how to put stents and everything. And I said, that's already in the past. We don't have any added value. Let's start a meeting which will be the future. We are not going to talk in the meeting about studies and p-values, and because if you have the results of a study, it means the past. We're going to talk about the future, and part of this meeting is what are the unmet needs. Really, one of the slogans and I learned two things in Stanford. One is what is the unmet need. The second one, what is your team? I realizing that if you have a very good, strong team and you have a good unmet need, you're starting a good way. So the theme of the meeting was what are the unmet needs, where are we going, what is missing. And what's nice in medicine that even if you create a very good technology, this technology by itself brings a lot of unmet need. Take the TAVR, for example. Yeah. It was a revolution, and then we have paravalvular leak and conduction problems and other problems. So each technology and each advance brings in itself the need for a lot of new things. And I think part of this meeting is really thinking about the future. Where are we going? What is still missing? And what should be changed?
And thanks. And what's unique, and now you have a partnership with LSI as well for the ICI. And you see also not just startup, but similar to LSI in different, more focus. You have strategic physicians, and you kind of put them all together. You try to drive innovation or partnership, or both?
Both actually. And again, like you said, it's very important to have a team. It's also very important to have partnership. I realized that about 5 years ago, I was actually in a big meeting in China, in Beijing, the CIT meeting. Yeah. And in breakfast, in the hotel, you don't find a place to sit because it's overcrowded. So finally, I saw a place and I went to sit there. And the gentleman looked at me, Professor Lotan, come sit down. And I looked at him. I didn't have a badge. I didn't know the guy. What's going on? And I said, sorry, do I know you? And he said, yes, of course. I'm here because of you. And I said, because of me? What did I do? He said, I came to your ICI meeting and we had a Chinese meeting together with China. And I was sitting next to a Chinese guy that is a big investor. We started to talk and we made a deal in the ICI. And here I am coming to China. So realizing that when you bring together all the stakeholders, the physicians, the bioengineers, the cardiologists, and especially what's important is people that bring with them the money, that's the best place. So I think that in answer to your question, teaming with LSI for ICI is very important, where we bring more startup, more VCs. And I think that in order to have a good cake, you need all the ingredients.
It sounds like you're still having fun.
Yeah.
So I see we have like a couple of minutes. Any final thoughts, whether it's on the weather, sports, your company, life?
Again, I just want to say one more thing, if you'll allow me. I think there's one more benefit to ICI, and that's the educational part. The Academy of Innovation Day, which is like, I attended that, and for me as an early entrepreneur, it was a wow. This is how you go through it. First you do the IP, then you do the study design. You go into it. So Academy of Innovation. I think the fact that you guys are also pushing education into innovation is also really important. That was like last 2 cents.
You need the check. That's it, more or less. Good. Any last thoughts?
We need more funds. That's what we need. But I think we're doing well. It's not that we cannot do, because we do things much more cost effective than worldwide. But still, we need funding.
And I think the nice thing in innovation that you don't see really the patient that you treat, but you know that you really helped. It's not, that doesn't matter really the amount of the check at the exit, but if you know that you treated so many patients, this, at the end of the day, you feel very, very good. And I think that as a treating physician, and what's nice is that Professor Biar and myself are both cardiology, both academics and everything, but when you combine the innovation together with him, it gives us a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I'll say first, thank you for joining the panel. And I still, I live in Boston, so I see a lot of people still believe in Israel, and so keep the belief. And Israel has a good name of innovation. Chaim just mentioned the acquisition by Edwards, and there's a lot of R&D centers. So more innovation will come. I'll bet we'll hear more stories. We'll hear from the panel tomorrow as well, some other stories, not just in cardiology. And thanks for everyone for joining. Appreciate it.
Okay.